Help stop red light running. Go to stoponred.org to support
Good morning, Commissioners, and welcome to our budget workshop for the 2011-2012 fiscal year. Over the last 3 years, as our city and country have struggled to overcome the effects of the recession, these workshops have largely been focused on identifying expected budget deficits and then getting to the work of what actions our government needed to take in order to make sure we lived within our means. But I am pleased to report to each of you this morning and our residents that we expect this year to be much different. Commissioners, because of the hard work done by each of you and all of our city employees over the past 3 years, we do not anticipate a major budget shortfall. This means that the city will be able to craft a balanced budget with no major reductions to services or programs in the 2011-12 budget. And more importantly, we will once again be able to deliver a balanced budget to our residents without raising our millage rate. In a few minutes, Rebecca and Ray are going to walk us through our budget history and overview of the city's departments and our expected revenue projections for the year ahead. And before we begin that, I think it's important that we reflect on some of the difficult but important steps that we have taken over the last several years to live within our means and how these decisions have put us on a very positive position for the future. Like every other municipal government in Florida, Orlando has had to endure a number of drastically reduced revenue years due to the effects of our national recession. And in response, we have eliminated more than 400 positions. We have reduced or eliminated non-essential services. We fulfilled a commitment to reducing the size of government, with the only new spending going towards police and fire protection. I'm proud of our employees. They stepped up and voluntarily relinquished cost of living increases. We challenged our departments to do more with less, and the city achieved balanced budgets during that time without raising taxes. And this has kept Orlando on firm financial footing during some of the toughest days we have ever seen in our lifetime. And because of this hard work, our residents can proudly say that Orlando is in the best financial shape of any major city in the state of Florida. And I know this is a bold statement, but look at where we stand in comparison to other Florida cities. Orlando has the lowest tax rate of any major city in Florida. Orlando has a lower tax rate today than it did 20 years ago. Many of Florida's cities raised taxes in response to the negative effects of the recession. We've fought against tax increases. Orlando has balanced its budget without the need to drain its reserves. In fact, since 2005, we have added savings by 30%, while other local governments have drained their strategic reserves. Orlando has more police officers per 1,000 residents than any major city in Florida. And at the same time, we have the fewest total employees per 1,000 residents of any major Florida city. Orlando is the only major city government in Florida that has funded all its committed retirement benefits, and we have a AAA bond rating, the highest bond rating possible. Commissioners, I want our residents to be proud of the way we collectively have handled these financial times. We did not bury our head in the sand. We didn't close up shop. Instead, over the course of the last several years, we have made tough, responsible choices to reduce the size of our government while maintaining our investments in important areas like police, fire, public works, and our downtown core. Our residents should be proud that Orlando is in the best financial shape of any major city in Florida. Rebecca, Ray, let's go through how we're going to keep it that way.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm pleased to bring to you this morning a report on our budgeting process for fiscal year 2011-12. I would like, before we get started, to recognize those individuals on my staff and on the staffs of all the departments across the city for the hard work that they have done, not only this year, but in the past 3 to 4 years that have brought us to this day. I think that they deserve a great deal of credit, and I just want to give them a little recognition this morning. This morning we're going to go over the 2010 operating results. That's important because it gives us a view of where we are today and why we're there. Secondly, Ray will come up and go over 2011 revenue projections, so you can see what we're planning for next year, what we believe is prudent to project for revenue coming in, our fiscal year 2012 proposed budget status, and then we're going to have some presentations by our public safety departments to give you an understanding of the depth and breadth of their service delivery across the city. And then finally, we'll come back to you with some key dates. First of all, for 2010, I wanted to go over our audit results. Each year we have external auditors that are retained by the city and supervised by our audit board, our independent audit board, to come in and audit the financials of the city. This year we received a clean opinion from Ernst & Young. There were no findings in terms of any kind of financial inadequacy or issues, and so I just wanted to bring that to you. It's extremely good news, and we're very proud of it. Secondly, each time that our independent auditor comes in and examines the city, they examine not only our financial results, but they also examine the systems and the processes that we have in place and how protected the city and our citizens are from any kind of malfeasance or any other type of occurrence that would put their particular financial position here in the city at risk. This is a common occurrence that most of the time, and in fact in my 35 years of working with government, I have not known that there has been an instance as we've had in 2010. But in 2010, there were no findings. They found nothing wrong, nothing to suggest for improvement that they wanted to bring before us, and so no management letter was issued for the 2010 year. All of the prior year's audit findings as well had been addressed, so we were basically clean from the perspective of internal controls as well as clean from the perspective of our financial position. Our general fund results were also good news. First of all, from a budget to actual perspective, our budget contained an anticipated draws of reserves of $14.7 million. But actually, our results were $8 million positive. If you add those two numbers, one, we didn't have to draw from the reserves because we had a positive $8 million bottom line, and so as a result, that was a positive change of $22.7 million. I think if we want to drill down to that and find out why that is, the first is that we were $7.5 million in revenue over estimates, and these were primarily interest earnings. When we go into a budget year, we're very conservative with what we believe we're going to earn on interest because we don't have control of that market. And sometimes it's low and sometimes it's high. In this particular year, we earned 8%. We had planned about 2 to 2.5%. And so most of those of the revenue over estimation was simply that we had better than expected earnings on our idle cash. $15.2 million were expenses that were less than budget. The first area was $5.2 million of contingency that remained unused. We put the contingency in the budget for emergencies. If we don't have them, we don't spend it. There was $3 million in debt service that we did not have to use in 2010, and that was the SIB loan. As you know, we had budgeted our loan payments for Sunrail, but because Sunrail did not move forward as quickly as we had hoped, then we didn't have to pay the debt on Sunrail. And so we had $3 million in debt service we didn't have to pay. A portion of that as well is a difference in the actual interest expense we have on variable rate debt. We usually plan, once again, sort of the inverse of our interest earnings. We plan a higher amount of interest to be paid on variable rate debt, and it came in much lower than what we had planned, and that's the other part of that $3 million. $7 million came in departmental savings, and this was primarily from positions that were vacant along the way. Obviously, when an individual resigns, sometimes there's a delay in replacing them. And so this $7 million was a result of those gaps, if you will, in having full employment as far as our workforce is concerned. In our utility services tax fund, we had $1.1 million in revenue over estimates, and once again, this was primarily interest earnings in that fund. We had disaster recovery fund and our hurricane fund, $700,000 in revenue over estimates that was primarily interest earnings, and our ending fund balance for that particular fund is $11 million now. If you recall, back in 2004, we deposited $10 million, so we have been able to recap all of the money that we had deposited in that fund back in that point in time. And then our other post-employment benefits fund, this is the fund in which we address the issue of retirees' health insurance. As you know, in December 2005, the city discontinued this benefit for employees. But we still have all of our current employees that were hired before that date, and we need to responsibly fund this particular benefit. This city is one of few in the nation that actually funds this appropriately. We have been doing it since the start of this requirement. We now have $33.7 million in assets. Those assets earned approximately $13 million in interest earnings. And the reason for that is that, 13%. The reason that we have such a higher rate of return is because this is managed as a pension fund. It goes through and we have selected investments that are more along the line of a pension fund than the way that we invest cities' idle cash. And so as a result, that is making more money and providing us with a way to fund our future obligations. Each of our annual required contributions have been funded, and we budgeted this in 2011 and we'll budget it in 11-12 as well. I'm now going to call Ray to the podium to go over our revenue projections and our projected budget position for this next year.
Good morning, Commissioners. We'll start off with the overview of our revenue projections for fiscal year 2012, and you can see from the bottom line we're projecting, as of today, a budget of $347.2 million. That is a $9.1 million decrease year to year, about 2.56%. You'll see there's really two major reasons for that. One is on our ad valorem revenue, and once again, we are experiencing a decline in our taxable base, and we have slides to go through that. Also under our other revenue, and that's primarily driven by our red light camera, and that's more of an estimating error as opposed to a revenue error. And then there's a risk management rebate is more of an accounting change. In previous years, we've accounted for that as a rebate back to the funds. Starting in fiscal year 2012, we're going to reduce our actual premium payments. So that's more of an accounting adjustment as opposed to a revenue reduction. But for budgetary purposes, our budget next year, as of today, is projected at $347.2 million. Start off with ad valorem revenue. This estimate's based on the property appraiser's certified tax roll. We have an overall reduction in our taxable value of 2.71%, and our new construction for next year is about $200 million. And for projection purposes, we've used our current millage rate of 5.65. Show this slide every year. It's actually getting a little bit more ridiculous than in previous years, but our current millage rate is 5.65. If we were to generate the same revenue next year that we're currently generating this year, that would require a roll forward rate of 5.9488. As you recall, back through the property tax reform whole series of events went through there. There's a couple of other millage rates that we publish so that you're aware of what those are. The adjusted rollback rate is if we were to go back and recapture all the revenue we've lost as a result of property tax reform, would require a millage rate of 9.01. Our rate with the majority vote, so we're allowed to increase that by the change in personal income, which was 0.055%. So a majority vote of the City Council can approve a millage rate of 9.0687. And if two-thirds majority, which is 10% higher than the previous one, we can go all the way up to 9.9756. So we're almost at the 10 mil cap if we were to do those rates. But for projection purposes and for budgetary planning purposes, for next year we're using our current millage rate of 5.65. The next slide is a graph of our taxable value, and you can see what has happened over the last 26 years. And we are really in uncharted waters as far as what's going on with their taxable values. We're in the third year of a decline. Fortunately, the last 2 years were double-digit declines. This year, we're only looking at a 2.7% decline. But you can see in our fairly long history back to 1987, we've never been in a period where we had declining taxable value for 3 years in a row. Looking at it as a percentage basis, which is on the next slide, you can see not only were these last 3 years the first time we've had 3 years in a row, they're actually the first 3 years where we've had declining taxable values in the City of Orlando. Going down a little further within our ad valorem revenue, homestead property. If you remember, homestead property the taxable value of homestead property can grow by 3% or a change in CPI, whichever is lower. And for fiscal year 2012, the change in CPI is 1.5%. So 1.5% is the most a homestead property's taxable value can increase year to year. Looking at what's happened to homestead properties, in the chart on the left-hand side, from last year to this year, homestead properties, the average homestead property has declined by about $4,000. That translates to $23 in city taxes. Over the last 3 years, the value of an average homestead property has declined from $120,000 to $89,000, and you can see that's resulted in a tax bill of $175 less proposed for 2012 than actually occurred in 2009. What's going on behind the scenes? That first graph I showed you was the taxable value. That graph is actually higher and can be greatly more magnified by the value that's been taken off the roll by the Saves Our Homes exemption. In 2008, at our peak, we had $3.1 billion worth of homestead property value that was not taxable. Most of that's been eaten away as a result of declining property values. And for 2012, our current Save Our Homes value for homestead property is only $300 million. Looking at non-homestead properties for the last 2 years, the growth in non-homestead properties has been capped at 10%. And you can see that we actually saw an increase in the property values that have been taken off the tax roll for non-homestead properties in 2011 and 2012. So that's taxable value growth above 10% for those properties. This one we haven't talked about before, trying to keep the presentation fresh. It's a tangible personal property exemption. As you recall, in 2009, as part of the property tax reform effort, there was an exemption for every tangible personal property tax account of $25,000. So the first $25,000 was exempt. And you can see that value has remained fairly constant from 2009 to 2012. And that equates to about $900,000 in ad valorem revenue that we're currently not collecting because of the exemption for tangible personal property. Looking at our other revenue sources, our sales tax revenue in the current fiscal year for 2011, we're tracking very close to our budget estimate. And based on the latest estimate we received from the state of Florida, we're projecting an increase of 5.2% as a result of economic activity, which will result in about $1.5 million of additional revenue in 2012 over 2011. Here's the graph, and you can see that we are actually doing quite well in sales tax revenue. Our peak year was 2007. We're quickly approaching that. So that is a good sign as far as economic indicators about activity that's going on in the private sector. Municipal revenue sharing. Again, we're tracking very close to our budget estimates for 2011. 2012, based on the state's latest estimate, is an increase of 8% for next year, or about $700,000. Franchise fee and dividend, this is a payment we received from OUC. And from 2008 to 2011, the city and OUC boards had agreed to a fixed payment per year for each of those 5 fiscal years. And during that time, our payments from OUC grew from $71.1 million to $76.8 million. For 2012 projection purposes, we're keeping that number flat. We've had discussions with OUC. That was a request of theirs to keep that payment flat year to year, and that's what we've used to develop our revenue projections next year and also to look at our expenditure and whether that's affordable or not. So for 2012, we're projecting their total revenue from OUC is flat, and that we'll have future discussions with them to work out a payments for future fiscal years. Our local business tax, we're projecting flat year to year. We've already achieved that amount in our current fiscal year through May, so we're not changing our business tax rates for fiscal year 2012, and our budget projection for next year assumes the same level of business activity. Risk management rebate. As I mentioned, since 2005, we have been bringing back excess premiums that have been paid to our risk management fund as rebates to each of the funds that pay into it. In 2010, 2011, we brought back rebates of $3 million. Given that we've got this track record of over-collecting on our premium payments in 2012, we're going to change the way we account for those, and we're going to reduce our premiums we're paying in as opposed to bringing a rebate back. So what that does is it reduces the expenditure side of the budget as opposed to increasing the revenue side of the budget. In 2012, we're anticipating a premium reduction of about $3 million for the general fund and a proportionate amount for each of the other funds. So the other funds will realize the same premium payment reduction to our risk management fund. In our other revenue category, it contains all of our administrative reimbursements, fees, fines, forfeiture, and all of our other miscellaneous revenue. We're projecting a budget decline of $4.9 million. The primary reason for that is when we developed the fiscal year 2011 budget, we had anticipated a higher revenue collection number from our red light camera program. As I'm sure you're all aware, the state made changes to that program. We're now paying in a percentage of our red light camera fees to the state. And as a result, 2011, we're not obtaining our projected revenue numbers, so we've reduced our budget estimates for fiscal year 2012, and that's the primary reason why you'll see the negative number there. On the good side, our red light camera program is self-sustaining, so that's not an issue to us. And then finally, the last revenue number is our fund balance allocation. When we developed the 2011 budget, we had projected a fund balance usage of $20.5 million, and at that time we had projected that was going to be above and beyond our 25% reserve policy recommendation. For 2012, we're keeping that number flat, primarily made up of 3 components. The first component is when we, as Rebecca mentioned earlier, when we ended our fiscal year, we ended up much better than we had originally anticipated. So that's allowing us to use $15 million of reserves that are currently in reserves today that is above our 25% reserve policy. And that $15 million assumes that all $20 million would be used as well in 2011, which we know is not going to happen. So that $15 million is there. It's ready to be appropriated and used for 2012. By reducing our budget from 356 to 347, just a simple math calculation, 25% difference between those two numbers frees up $2.3 million worth of reserves. And then finally, for 2011, we're projecting we're not going to use the entire $20.5 million, so that'll free up $2.6 million. So at this point in time, we are very confident that the $20.5 million of reserves will be available for fiscal year 2012. And the important thing to note is that has no impact on our 25% reserve policy. So even using 20.5 in 2011 and using 20.5 in 2012, we will still be above our 25% reserve policy target. Just to give you a little bit of comfort level on the next slide, again, this is a new slide, and what we have done is we've gone back and looked at our 9 largest revenue sources, the ad valorem, sales tax, municipal revenue sharing, utility services tax, admin fees, business tax, and OUC revenue. And what we have done on the slide is plotted what percent of the budget those numbers make up. And you can see that on the blue bar, we're looking at about 90% of our revenue, and the general fund comes up from those 9 sources. And then what we did with the red line is to kind of project where, at this point in time, when we came to the City Council with our revenue projections, where did we actually end up? So the red line shows that we were probably, on average, right at 100% of being able to project 90% of our revenues. That's really important because, as I tell anyone who wants to talk about budget and the way the city is run, is that we can't absorb shocks. So the better we are in our revenue projections and the better are we in our expenditure projections, the better we can manage the city, because we can't absorb revenue shocks as well as expenditure shocks. So this gives us provides a little confidence level on our revenue projections. One year that we were low was the fiscal year 2009. As you recall back all of 2 years ago, we did come to City Council twice to reduce that revenue estimate, and those came out of contingency that had been built into the budget. The other thing we'll talk about is our positive historical year-end results. So if we project 90% of our budget, 100%, how are we ending up with money left over at the end of the year? One of those reasons is on the revenue side is conservative revenue estimates. And Rebecca talked a little bit about investment income. This chart gives us a history of where we were on our budget estimates versus where we are in our actual revenue for investment income. And you can see we varied anywhere from $2.8 million to $11 million over the last 5 years in investment income. The moral of that story is we can't build a budget based on $11 million. We're better off building on 2.8, and that way if we do exceed that estimate, we're in a better position. As I mentioned earlier, we can't absorb the shock. We can only imagine what we'd have to do if we budgeted based on 11.4 and it came in at 2.8, we'd be short $8 million. So on those revenues where we don't have the comfort level doing projections, we do a very conservative estimate to make sure that we are in a position where we don't have to come back to you and say we missed the estimate and we need to adjust our budget. And you can see for 2011, our budget was based on the income of $1.8 million, and through May, we're at $1.3 million. Simple math, if previous months' history is a predictor of future months' results, will be right at that $1.8 million estimate, even though we do encourage our Treasury Department to reach higher than our budget estimates. Also, on our positive historical year-end results, we have been able to save money at the end of the year. Rebecca mentioned our position savings. We also do budget a contingency, and we have a process, a very difficult process to tap into our contingent appropriations each year. And you can see over the last 6 years what our unspent contingency was at the end of the year, and anything unspent contingency falls right to our fund balance. So that's a good thing. In 2009, you see that number's a little bit lower because we did have to tap our contingency for our sales tax and our municipal revenue sharing estimates. So where we are in our current year budget, several months ago we sent out a directive to all of our departments to give us a current service level budget. And basically what that is tell us what it's going to cost us next year to operate what we're currently doing today. And you see that number came in at 347.2. I'll be candid, it was not 347, 241, 867. But for budgetary purposes, it was close enough for us to say that we are balanced. And actually balanced slightly to the positive side as far as our current surplus. So for where we are right now in our budget process, we do have revenue available to us in 2012 to continue to operate the city in the way that's currently operated today. Just a peek at this, and we'll come back in a workshop in 2 weeks to talk more about the expenditure side. You can see the breakdown of where we are in 2012 departmental-wise on our budget. We're at $347,241, the same $9.1 million decline. And you can see right now, if we look at the bottom section, where our police and fire department budgets, last year we're at 54.69% of the budget. In 2012, that'll go over 55%, almost 56% of our budget, our general fund budget, going towards police and fire. As I mentioned, we'll be back in 2 weeks to talk more detail about what's going on the expenditure side. But now I'll turn it over to Chief Miller to talk about the public safety departments.
Thank you, Ryan.
Morning, Mayor, Commissioners. I want to thank you again for your support of public safety and for the recognition that without public safety, no growing community would prosper. That's important. Started off with this slide. Presentation day is not going to be so much numbers as it is the services that we provide and the fact that we are 20 to 25% of the city's budget, but what you get from that, and I'd like our public to know the services that we do provide. You see this slide here is representative of 126 years of fire department history. This is the first fire station number 1, which would be the current location of Wall and Court. You see it right next to the City Hall there. You see our pride and joy back at that time. And then approximately 1919, we moved to a location that is currently the library, Central Florida Library, and obviously made a transition from horses to automobiles. Today, we run more than 50,000 calls for service. We have 496 sworn personnel, 66 civilian personnel. We serve a community of greater than 240,000 with an influx of visitors and business community of more than 100,000 above and beyond that. We serve an area of greater than 110 square miles, and we do this through our delivery of 17 fire stations with our apparatus, engines, towers, rescues, and specialized equipment. That is done with the management provided. Our mission statement is just simple: save lives and protect property. And we were able to do that through our managing bureaus. The Fire Operations Bureau basically is our 911 delivery service, fire rescue operations. In-field operations is also our health and safety, our Special Investigative Service, which is arson, bomb, and investigators. The Administrative Services Bureau is our planning and resource management, public relations, facilities, fleet, supply operations. And our Support Services Bureau covers important areas of emergency medical services and training, our Communications Bureau, technology management, emergency management, and fire safety management. The core of what we do is fighting fires. And as you know, firefighting is an inherently dangerous job. It requires a great deal of training, professionalism, and a very structured operating procedure to prevent the potential disastrous outcome while striving to preserve life and property. The Orlando Fire Department is second to none when it comes to the safe and aggressive fireground operations. With the ability to quickly get an effective firefighting force on the scene and our multifaceted approach to the fireground, and simultaneously fight fire while also going into search and rescue operations. With this multifaceted approach to firefighting, the City of Orlando has not had a civilian fire death in more than 5 years. And with the responsibility of protecting billions of dollars in property, ranging from historical structures to ultra-modern construction, in 2010, the Orlando Fire Department responded to and protected over $112 million of an estimated $115 million involved structure, equating to a loss of only 2.6%. We run more than 30,000 calls for emergency medical services, ranging from minor lacerations to fractures to strokes, diabetics, all the way to shootings and cardiac arrests. At locations throughout the city, whether private residences, senior high-rises, schools, businesses, theme parks, and even in the middle of I-4. With each of these calls, our citizens receive the professional care from the Orlando Fire Department's highly skilled paramedics and emergency medical technicians who staff each one of our fire apparatus throughout the city. 5 months ago, with the support of the mayor and this council, the Orlando Fire Department made the seamless transition into fire-based transport, which our citizens and visitors could be transported to the hospital from the scene utilizing OFD's existing firefighters who are dual certified in EMS and fire delivery. Since February 1st, 2011, I know I have the slide saying over 7,000 transported. We are currently at 8,300 transports for service to local hospitals while maintaining the quality and continuity of patient care that our citizens expect. Although fire and EMS are our primary areas of service, the fire service is recognized for its ability to deal with all emergencies in its community, be it a single event or a large-scale natural or man-made disaster. The Orlando Fire Department has a long history of innovation and leadership in benchmark training and delivery of specialized operation, whether it be dive rescue, hazardous materials, technical rescue, or extrication services. The Orlando Fire Department has provided water rescue services in our community since 1946, long before any community in Central Florida area. And if you see in this picture here, you'll see the aqua helmet and the air compressor that they utilized back in 1946 and the transition to the dry suit that we currently use today for dive operations. Since the late 1960s, OFD has advanced to full dive rescue operations, providing search, rescue, and recovery in all bodies of water in Central Florida. Today, the fire department dive team continues to provide water rescue services to the citizens with the most advanced equipment and training available. The Orlando Fire Department provides the only dive rescue team in Central Florida. We are the only agency trained to provide below water rescue services from within any body of water in Central Florida, whether it be lakes, ponds, or canals. Because of our level of training and experience, we have assisted many of our neighboring communities with the life-saving mutual aid dive rescue services. In an effort to continue to enhance our water rescue services, this past year, all sworn personnel have been trained and equipped to provide surface water rescue throughout the city. That's all of our apparatus. With the inherent special hazards presented in a growing metropolitan city, the Orlando Fire Department trains for and responds to a variety of hazardous materials incidents, including our interstate highways, expressways, carrying vehicles and tankers, train cars carrying hazardous materials through the downtown core, large industrial hazards, a large volume of natural and propane gas lines dispersed throughout the city, to the commercial and residential hazardous chemical spills and gas leaks which occur on a daily basis. The Orlando Fire Department is designated as a state Type 2 hazardous materials team, which we have decentralized throughout the entire city to continue to minimize the impact on our citizens, not only life safety, but potential environmental impacts and the fiscal impacts that these emergencies would create. Our technical rescue. The Orlando Fire Department was the first to initiate the concept of high angle in 1986. It wasn't until 1999 that NFPA developed standards for high angle rescue, of which the Orlando Fire Department assisted and obviously was in compliance with. Today, this specialty has grown into technical rescue, which provides not only rope rescue, but trench rescue, confined space operations, and collapse rescue. These skills needed to provide these highly advanced and critical operational necessary for these high-risk, low-frequency events. As you know, we also have Task Force 4, which was formed as a state asset in 2003. It's one of only 9 state teams. This specialized team was created under an interlocal agreement between the City of Orlando, Seminole County, and Orange County. They are part of the SERP and receive a tasking number with each deployment. Some of the equipment that Orlando has as an asset is our tractor trailer and equipment, boats, canteens, vans, pickups, bobcats, among others. These highly trained and equipped personnel have been involved in multiple deployments over the past several years. They've been to Hurricane Katrina, where they spent 8 days in Biloxi, Hurricane Jean in the Barefoot Bay area, Hurricane Wilma on the west coast of Florida, and Hurricane Ivan in the Panhandle, to name a few. The Orlando Fire Department and our city residents benefit greatly from the assets that are immediately available to us, this highly trained personnel that have OFD as a result of this state asset here in Orlando. Extrication. On a daily basis, specially trained personnel and equipment provide extrication services to the citizens of Orlando. We deploy our tower trucks anytime there is a report of a patient extrication. This is primarily, as you see in the video, for vehicle extrications. But these services are frequently used for entanglement, industrial accidents, patients impaled on wrought iron fences, and any construction site type events that may cause entanglement. With our multifaceted approach using safety, rescue operations, and entrapment removal, we're able to provide the best chance of survivability here in the city of Orlando. The Orlando Fire Department Arson Bomb Squad. They were formed in 1984, the only fire-based bomb squad in Florida. They're all FBI bomb technicians. The members of this special investigative service have three primary responsibilities. They're bomb squad technicians, mitigate all and real and potential threats in the city of Orlando, including the Orlando Executive Airport, which is one of the busiest airports in the country. They do fire investigations and arrests for potential arson suspects, and of course our internal affairs within the fire department. As dual certified police and fire officers, as well as certified fire investigators, the Orlando Fire Department Arson Bomb Squad has an arson arrest rate of 36%, which is twice the amount of the state fire marshal and the national average. Also, if you see in the picture there is our newest Orlando Fire Department accelerant detection canine dog named Jesse. It's only the second dog in the history of Orlando Bomb Squad. Planning and resource management. As part of the many critical support functions of the Orlando Fire Department, planning and resource management encompasses areas of our staff and line, our fleet operations, planning section, our supply section, our facilities and vehicle operations support. It also includes fire station construction and ISO compliance. As you see from this map and these pictures, as a result of Mayor Dyer's public safety initiative, recognizing the need to fill in the fire service delivery gaps by enhancing fire station distribution, the Orlando Fire Department better serves its community through the addition of 6 new fire stations. As you see from those pictures, Fire Station 1 on Central replaces our 50-year-old station that was on Magnolia across the street. Fire Station 7 in Washington Shores replaces a nearly 45-year-old station off of Goldwyn. Fire Station 14 replaces a trailer that was in place in Lee Vista near the Econ. And Fire Station 15 in Lake Nona, Savannah Park area off of Narcoossee Road. Station 16 in Lake Nona near the Medical City development. And Station 17 in Millennia Park near the Millennia Boulevard and Millennia Mall area. As I have spoken to you all on numerous occasions, the Orlando Fire Department is an ISO Class 1. As a direct result of Mayor Dyer's public safety initiative, on March 1st, 2008, we were awarded this classification of an ISO 1. The Orlando Fire Department is only one of 62 departments. I know historically over the last several years I've told you one of 55. Well, the numbers have grown just a little bit. We are one of 62 departments nationwide out of 48,000 rated departments. We were one of 55 out of 45, so our top tenth of 1% in the entire nation actually has improved some. So it is a great statement. The ISO, the rating, the way that rating is accomplished through the public protection classification is through fire department staffing, equipment, station distribution, available water supply and hydrant distributions, as well as our 911 communication center. The Orlando Fire Department's 911 communication center is located in the Emergency Operations Center. It's nationally accredited by the Association of Communications Excellence. It is a critical component and key success to our operation. All personnel are trained as emergency medical dispatchers, and they receive the citizen's call within 6 seconds. And immediately thereafter, they process the call, provide life-saving information to the citizen calling, dispatch the units required to that call, and all done within 60 seconds, within 1 minute of that call. Public relations is another critical component to the success of our mission of saving lives and property. We have a long history of providing public outreach. Many of you know our CERT program, Citizens Fire Academy, our Pipes and Drum and Honor Guard, which are extremely effective public relations tool, our Fire Museum in Lock Haven, Juvenile Fire Setter program, which provides counseling and education to our young children and adults about the consequences of setting fires. All of these programs. The CERT program is probably the most recognized and popular program. It started in 1994. It started as a program that we sent personnel out to Los Angeles when they had their earthquake program. They had a CERT earthquake program. We developed it for Florida, for the Central Florida area, to mitigate and help the public with situations like hurricanes, tornadoes, and sudden events. We have trained over 2,500 residents thus far with this program. And the FEMA has actually taken our program and developed it for the East Coast of Florida. And the training that we provide to our citizens is emergency medical operations, light search and rescue, and fire suppression. Firefighter training. Primary key to the success of the Orlando Fire Department is the training and preparation of our personnel. They are provided with over 18,500 hours of training each year, with an emphasis on personnel safety and the success of our department's mission. There are a wide range of training you see here are hose operations, pump operations, extrication, removing bars, and new hire training, high-rise operations, to name a few. EMS training. As I stated, we run over 30,000 calls, greater than 30,000 calls, and it's another critical component of our success. The training incorporates the EMS skills that are necessary: CPR, advanced cardiac life support, pediatric advanced life support. There's quite a bit of training required for all of our paramedic and EMTs. And you'll notice the one stat that's up on your screen. The example of the quality of the Orlando Fire Department service is in our fire department's code save rate of 34%, compared to a national average of 2 to 10% on code save. And for the public, our code save rate is a cardiac arrest when you have your heart fails and we have to initiate CPR and advanced life support. Our success is more than 3 times the national standard. Fire safety management, led by our Fire Marshal, Tammy Hughes, is responsible for the administration of our city's fire code and completing more than 15,000 inspections annually, and also contribute to the success of the fire department's mission. They also provide education and training in fire safety practices to our residents and commercial high-rises, schools, nursing homes, high-density occupations like apartments, condos, and townhomes, large assembly facilities, and residential communities. And the Office of Emergency Management, which falls under the Fire Department, and Manny Soto. Their role is to ensure that the city is prepared for any potential natural or man-made disaster, both before, during, and after the emergency. We're coordinating all the recovery efforts. This also provides important community education, working with over 100 local, state, federal, and volunteer organizations to make that success. Under Manny's direction, the emergency management coordinates an emergency preparation of all city departments, disaster purchasing, fund recovery. They work on the city's comprehensive emergency management plan, gaining and obtaining our Storm Ready certificate, which we had since 2003, one of only 8 municipalities in the state of Florida, and the largest urban municipality in the state of Florida to have this certification. He also prepares the residents in our city with the state warning point, Orlando warning point, utilizing mass media, Orange County alert, paging, and email system, as well as the internet, Facebook, Twitter, and all forms of media. Fire Department's priorities and focus in the fiscal year 2011 and 12. I told you about some of the services. What we're going to focus on going into this next year is obviously customer service, the evaluation of our fire-based EMS transport, continued community outreach. I can tell you that the Fire Department hasn't been immune to financial difficulty, like the economic times here. Back in 2008, 2009 budget year, we slashed from 524 positions down to 496. The following year, 2009-10's budget, as you know, we were facing the effects of the economic downturn and subject to the layoff of 46 firefighters in some of the services. And through the efforts of Mayor Dyer, the Fire Department administration, some of our local legislative delegation and our union, we were able to obtain a FEMA SAFER grant, which was for a little more than $8.3 million, and retain those 46 firefighters and all the services that we are customary to provide to our citizens. And since then, we've been working on some grant funding. We received grant funding from the Department of Homeland Security, through FEMA, through UASI, state SHISCAP grants, local funding, Oracle. We're working on some additional funding as well. I think to date we're well over, in the last couple of years, $9 million in grants obtained through the Orlando Fire Department. We want to continue to provide the highest level of service to our growing community. And I'll finish just with a brief recap so that the importance of what I was trying to express to you is, in the last 126 years, the services we provide. The quick recap of our code save rate: 34%, greater than 7 times the national average. Our citizens should feel comfortable that they know that they're going to be safe and treated well in their medical emergency. The arson arrest rate, 36%, more than double of what you'd find throughout the rest of the state. Fire loss of only 2.6% in the property loss in the city. Our ISO rating of a Class 1, second to none in the entire country. So, Mayor and Commissioners, I want to thank you for the opportunity to tell you a little bit about what the citizens' tax dollars pay for. I think we're living up to the standard of being one of the best in the country. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to take them this time. Thank you.
Chief Rooney, you're up.
I think because I have video, it's taking a little bit longer to set up. Sorry. But in the meantime, Mayor Dyer, City Commissioners, thank you for this opportunity. The first slide is going to represent the Orlando Police Headquarters, just a photo of the Orlando Police Headquarters. Next year it turns 40 years old. We're very proud of that building, and kudos to facilities. Within the last month, we've had some serious AC problems, and the elevator has not been working, but they got it up and running, so thank you to facilities. So that's the first slide you'll see. Our police department, again, very proud of it. A quick overview and staffing and organization. Again, recently we've made some changes in our command staff. So they're here today. I just briefly going to introduce them and tell you what bureau they now command. First one is Deputy Chief Jeff Odell. He's got the Patrol Services Bureau, which is the largest bureau, a little over 400. Oh, did you? I'm sorry. Okay. Secondly is Deputy Chief Sanja White. She is now over the Administrative Services Bureau, which is a support services, communications, recruiting, and technology management. Also newly appointed Deputy Chief Charles Robinson. who's now got investigative services, which includes criminal investigations, drug enforcement, and our intelligence unit. And Deputy Chief Larry Zwig, who's got the Special Services Bureau, Crime Prevention Division, Special Ops, International Airport. Captain Jan Crowd, our new captain over professional standards, and really helped me with this PowerPoint, so thank you, Jan, for that. Bobby Anzueto, who's in the back, he's my right-hand man. He's my new staff director. Natasha Williams, over our legal. And Lieutenant Lou Tansey, our Violent Crimes Initiative Commander. And again, without the talent and the staff, none of this would have been possible. I'm blessed. A real quick overview on authorized staffing. Current 976 with 743 sworn and 233 civilian. And as you can see by this chart, over the last few years, due to the difficult budget times, we have really cut back some officers and about 70 civilian positions since 08-09. So really cutting down the bone, using technology. We eliminated the PACE, where the officers are doing the field reports out in the field now, and so forth. All right, John mentioned a little bit about the population served, about 235,000 residents in Orlando. The service population, the folks that come in to work and so forth, we're at about 353,000. Hopefully in the next 10 years, I'm sure we'll see an increase in both the service and residential population. I'm in Leadership Orlando. Last month I attended a training session down in Medical City, and I'm just amazed by the growth. I was at OIA actually last night flying in. 35 million folks traveled through OIA last year alone. We have 72 sworn officers out at the airport, and 51 million visited Orlando in 2010. Great numbers. And these numbers always are growing each year. I've been watching them for the last 4 years. Calls for service received. This is through our Patrol Services Bureau and Communications Division. Over 1 million calls for service received. Calls dispatched. This is just Patrol alone. 113,000 calls dispatched. And I just wanted to take a few moments to explain response times. Priority 1 would be a hot call, a robbery in progress, stabbing, shooting, and so forth. We're at 4.9 minutes average time. Priority 2, and that's from the time the call comes in to the actual time the officers respond. Priority 2 would be like a disturbance or a suspicious person, and we're still at 12 minutes. And then priority 3, which would be completely over with, a traffic crash with no injuries, burglary with no suspects or anything like that, completely over with, theft of a bike or whatever, we're at 35 minutes. So very, very good average response times. All right, now on the criminal investigation side, we have, in CID, we call it, we have reviewed over 13,000 cases. They were forwarded to our Criminal Investigations Division. Of course, from that number, we need to really take a look at how we can solve those. Any leads, any witnesses, video, physical evidence, DNA, prints, blood, etc. And out of those 13,105 that you see, we've actually had some leads, about 3,500 with leads. And out of that, we actually cleared, which is amazing, 3,000 cases that were cleared mainly through arrest and warrants with an 88.81% clearance rate. I want to take that one step further. Homicides to date, we've had 15 this year. We have solved 13 of the 15 homicides, 87% clearance rate. There's only 2 unsolved homicides this year in Orlando. And that, all those numbers, all the cases and cases reviewed, has been done with only 55 detectives, worker bees, working in our Criminal Investigations Division. Only 55. Okay, just continuing on with some revenues collected. Like I stated earlier, Mayor Dyer, commissioners had asked us to take a hard look at how we can generate maybe some more funds. We looked at vehicles for hire applications, crash reports. We now collect from crash reports online. Fingerprinting, we set up some fingerprinting, and fix-a-ticket. And let me explain that. Fix-a-ticket is kind of, yeah. If the driver gets a citation for a tail light or tag light or headlight out, instead of paying the full fine, if they get it repaired in a certain amount of time, they can come to some of our locations, our Northwest Community Police Office, Southeast Community Police Office. We have a staff assistant go out there with an officer, sign off on the citation, and we collect fines, that fine. So we are really thinking outside the box, trying to generate more revenue, and it's a convenience for the citizens of Orlando. New police application, let me back up. Yeah, that's $95,600 in additional fees collected this year alone. The new police application, that's a one-time $25 fee if you want to apply for the Orlando Police Department. One-time fee, it's been very successful. We've collected $30,000 in 4 months. We'll use those funds, of course, for recruiting trips to offset some of the cost, public service announcements, and so forth. And then off-duty administrative fees. Universal came to us several years ago and asked us if we could process all the paychecks, all the payroll through our Orlando Police Headquarters fiscal management. And we've done that. Universal Studios, Super Walmart, Wet n Wild are just a few of those. Grants. John mentioned grants. I'll mention grants. We're at about $13 million in grants. Currently, we have 16 for about $9 million, and that's the COPS grants for 15 officers, UASI grants, JAG grants, where we bought radios and tasers and vests, laptops, AEDs, gun-mounted lights. The list goes on. Cameras. We currently have 9 pending, and we've already closed 22 for about $2.1 million. And I really want to just take a quick second to send some kudos to Shirley Grief, who's here today. Thank you, Shirley. She does a lot of work on the grants. All right, some of our successes and accomplishments. I wish there wasn't a decibel in front of that .65, but there is. But anyways, the first 6 months compared to last year, we do have a slight reduction. Violent crime, the first 6 months of last year compared to this year, we are down .65, and property crimes were down 5.1%. Some more successes. Pain clinics. I think Commissioner Diamond will agree with me here. We closed 2 so far this year. One was on Curry Ford, 5625 Curry Ford. The other one was located at 2015 South Orange Ave, which is right at Orange and Grant. And I think Commissioner Diamond was actually there when they served the search warrant at that location. Kudos to Shannon Hetz. MBI came to me last month and asked me if Shannon could oversee some of these search warrants and kind of legal advice. Well, last week I got a call from Phil Williams, who's a director at MBI. It was Wednesday. And he called me about noon. He goes, "Oh, we hit it big. We hit the owner's house of these clinics with a search warrant, and they were at $560,000 at that point, cash that they're counting." Well, by 5 o'clock that night, he called me and said they're now up to a total $960,400 in cash that the owner, these places are huge cash flows that the owner had and we seized. And again, that was great news. Timeshare scams. This is another success, very labor intensive. We've served over 56 search warrants, $570,000 in cash seized, 5,000 victims worldwide. There's so many people that have been scammed by these timeshare scam operations. We've made national news, the Orlando Police Department has, and as you can see from the photos, very labor intensive, seizing computers and records and evidence and so forth. But it needs to be done, and there's a lot of happy folks now knowing that we shut down some of these illegal timeshare scams. All right, moving along to fiscal year 2011-2012. Some of our focus is going to continue to be reduction of violent crime, officer safety and training, domestic violence, the elderly, enhanced recruiting efforts, and of course technology. Just some of the operations we have going now. The joint anti-crime is actually citywide, where we take one officer from each squad and go out there and kind of put out fires. If we're having residential burglaries up in College Park or down in the southeast or over on the west side, Orange Center, whatever, we use what's called our JACK Task Force. The Summer Violent Crime Initiative, that's an all-hands-on-deck initiative. That's where on Thursday and Friday, we know crime spikes between May and August. So on Thursdays and Fridays, we take detectives out of their role, motor officers out of their role, internal affairs detectives out of their role, you name it, your liaisons, the commissioners' liaisons, and we put them on the street Thursday and Friday nights, and they have been very successful, making robbery arrests, seizing firearms, and so forth. Blue Line is our TAC, 30-officer TAC patrol squads that just saturate all the hot spots. Rolling Thunder is a new initiative that's going to start this week. We've had Sable Palms Apartments over on Raleigh and Metro Place Apartments in Kirkman. We've had a very drastic increase in violent crime in those two apartment complexes, so we are going to saturate those areas as well. Summer Chill, that's putting our school resource officers to work during the summer. They work hard during the year, believe me. But they're off during the summer, so we utilize our school resource officers that are out at school for the summer, and they have done a great job as well out there on the streets. Officer safety. As you can see by the slides, unfortunately, we're seeing an increase in officers murdered in the line of duty. You can look at the stats yourself. More importantly, probably, is in Florida. Last year alone, in 2010, we had 9 officers killed in the line of duty. 9 officers killed in the line of duty in 2010. This year alone, the first 4 months, we had 10 officers killed in the line of duty. Unfortunately, Florida leads with 10 nationwide. More than Los Angeles, Dallas, New York. And unfortunately, back in December, on December 8th, we had one of our own, Orange County Deputy Brandon Coates, who was shot during a traffic stop, stopped a career criminal off South Orange Blossom Trail. Didn't know that the criminal had just committed a burglary and had stolen property in his truck. And that suspect shot Brandon in the head, killed him. And again, underneath his name, you see Twice the Hero. I was at the hospital that night shortly after Brandon Coates got taken into ORMC. And he had a lot of his military folks, guys that he'd served with in the military at the hospital. And you see the little caption underneath Brandon Coates, Twice the Hero. He had also served in Iraq and Afghanistan as well as the streets of Orlando. So, with that, officer safety, priority number 1. And let me just explain this to you because it's very important. We have what we call yes, maybe, and no folks out on the street. The yes people, no matter what, they're going to turn around. If we ask them to turn around, put their hands behind their back, they're going to do that. That's great. And as you can see by this chart, it's reflected that way. The majority of the folks, if we tell them to get on the ground or turn around, place their hands behind their back, they're going to do that. Then we have some maybe folks that we're not sure whether they're going to do that or not. And then we have the no folks that no matter what we do, they want to fight, they want to swing, kick, and so forth. But the good news is this. Out of 14,500 physical arrests, we've only had about 500 of those where we had to use a defensive tactics instrument, baton, chemical agent, taser. So those numbers are great. There's only 3.9% of the time where we have to use of force. And I think that's important. 14,500 physical arrests and only 500 or so times where we're using some type of use of force. Vest. One of my first initiatives upon being appointed as Chief of Police is a mandatory vest policy. I'm a firm believer in it. I attended a funeral in January in St. Petersburg where a 16-year-old had shot a 25-year veteran of the St. Petersburg Police Department. He was not wearing a vest, and again, maybe the suspect, if he knew he was wearing a vest, would have shot him in the head. There's always that argument, but the bottom line is all our first responders need to wear the ballistic vest. It's the right thing to do. As you can see by the numbers, over 3,000 officers have been saved. We're always increasing our training. Our motto is train today, win tomorrow. We're doing firearm training. Thank you for the state-of-the-art training facility over on Andes. I tell you, it's well worth it. It's an awesome training facility. I've rolled out to almost every single officer-involved shooting, and every time I've talked to the officer, they always say the training kicked in. I went to one last month where an officer was sitting in a patrol car chasing a robbery suspect, and the robbery suspect actually pulled up next to the officer. The officer wasn't able to get out quick enough. The suspect got out with a gun. The officer, as he was sitting in a patrol car, unholstered his firearm, shot through the closed police car's window, the passenger side window, and struck the suspect. And we were able to apprehend that suspect with a gun who pointed it at the officer. And if you backtrack, we had just last year, we had to qualify while shooting in a patrol car with seatbelt on and so forth. So again, just to bring that point home, the training is so valuable. Defensive tactics training, we're always training our officers to use all the tools on the belt, from the chemical spray to the baton to the taser, handcuffs, and so forth. And this is a new initiative, the newsletter. We're finding where if we inform the officers of just different little tips of where the suspects are hiding their drugs or guns. We had an incident a couple years ago where Tampa police, there was a suspect with the handcuff key around his neck. He was, as the detectives were transporting that suspect, he was able to get that handcuff key off a necklace and get his handcuffs off and use the detective's firearm and kill both detectives. So these are just safety tips that we're going to try to get out there. With that, I'm going to show you a real quick video just to show you what OPD does as far as our firearms training compared to what the state does. That's the state, the stand-up targets. Now this is the Orlando Police Department's qualification. Low light, moving targets, popping up and down. Because that's the way it really happens out on the street. That target isn't just standing straight in front of you. It's moving, ducking, jumping fences. And I'm proud to say we have a 78% hit rate. 78% hit rate when we use deadly force compared to the national average of only 18%. 78% OPD, nation 18%. Okay, next, domestic violence. I don't know if you saw today's Sentinel, but basically it says domestic murder rate falls sharply in orange, 16 to 7. 16 domestic murders compared to 7 January through June. We've had 4 in Orlando, but I'll still say it's not time to celebrate by any means. All domestic violence cases, as you can see there, are reviewed by a detective. We got a great relationship with Harbor House. No contact orders. We're enforcing that. When the judge says you will not text, you will not email, you will not visit the victim's place of employment or residence, we enforce that. We have members currently, OPD members currently on the Domestic Violence Task Force and also the Domestic Violence Fatality Review Committee. And this is a new initiative we're going to start doing, our spot checks on some of the serious domestic violence offenders, find out what they're up to. Last week I met with Carol Wick, the Chief Executive Officer of Harbor House. She's going to kick off Project Courage this August, which is nothing more than an awareness program that trains the community on how to refer people for help. In fact, during that conversation we were talking, I told her that we just kicked off a teen police academy on Orange Center Boulevard that had 50 kids from the neighborhood in there, and she asked to slice out just an hour to go in and educate the teens as well, which is, I think, is a great idea. And again, it's all about that communication. And the last thing she left me with, and I thought this, I'm proud that she said this, OPD is always willing to try new initiatives. I thought that was nice. The next slide you're going to see, unfortunately, those 2 beautiful young ladies are no longer with us, both victims to domestic violence murder. The one on the left, your left, was killed by her boyfriend. She was struck in the head, and I don't mean to be gory, but I just want to tell you what happened. Struck in the head with a barbell. And she had 4 kids inside the residence. And it was all because she broke up the engagement with her fiancé. The one to the right was a prowler call that we actually got. It was her estranged husband, looked in through the sliding glass door, saw her with her new boyfriend, broke out the door, shot and killed both the victim and her new boyfriend. Now, they had a child together, the estranged husband and the victim, and it was the daughter who actually talked the dad into surrendering, put the gun down and come out. Because, like I said, we had gotten a call reference a prowler, so we were there before anybody called us in from that home. And then, unfortunately, in the bottom right-hand corner, I'm sure you saw it on the news last year, was the Publix, where the estranged husband had waited in line, and the victim, his wife, was a cashier at the Publix at Michigan and Orange. And as the suspect approached, he shot and killed the victim, his wife, right there while, the store full of Publix customers. Interesting enough, when he ran out of the store, we had an officer just patrolling the Publix parking lot. The officer saw this suspect before the call even went out, and saw he had a gun in his hand, challenged the suspect, and the suspect ended up putting the gun to his head and killing himself. But again, and you see the little caption up there, 7 children lost their mothers due to domestic violence in 2011. So we are very serious about our domestic violence initiatives. Elderly, near and dear to all our hearts. We're going to step it up, help out with painting, yard work, shopping. We have a career development program at the Orlando Police Department where these officers can get career points towards master police officer, master sergeant, and so forth. We're going to increase our contacts. The goal, of course, is to reduce the fear of crime. And again, the elderly are watching the news all day. They're reading the newspapers, and a lot of that's filled with violence and crime and so forth. We want to reduce that fear. School crossing guards, another success story. Again, if the school crossing guard is not there, we incepted this in 2008, then we have to send either a sworn officer or a community service officer. This is a great program. We just had our recently end-of-year award luncheon. These are great folks. I mean, how many people do you know that will come in at 7 a.m., go home for a little bit, come back at 3, and all for $9.75 an hour? I mean, so great folks that are out there that truly believe in the mission to keep the kids safe as they're crossing the school campuses. Recruiting, again, we have some hard vacancies that are funded, so we've ramped up our recruiting efforts. We're not going to lower our standards. And we're going to keep on hitting the military and colleges and so forth to get some fine young men and women hired. Technology. Last week I started a newly formed technology and forensic unit. I'll talk real quickly about dash cameras, crime-free multi-housing, and the continuation of the IRIS program. On the technology and forensic unit, it's 1 sergeant, 4 detectives. I used it with resources that were already available, and basically we got to change with the times. You saw it with the computers. You got child pornography, you got the timeshare scams I talked about. Even in the Casey Anthony case last week, you heard about the chloroform search and how they were able to research all that. Cell phones are extremely valuable evidence in homicides, drug dealings, economic crimes, and so forth. So we had to change with the times. In the in-car video cameras, we currently have 18 cameras out there deployed, 6 in patrol, 12 in our drug enforcement division. You can see the numbers there. We just recently purchased 16 cameras and 2 servers for $100,000 out of a grant. And I'll just show you this quick DUI incident as a result of the in-car video. The video is a great tool. It's an OPD officer, southwest part of town. Obviously didn't pass the test. IRIS continues to be a great success. We have more than 100 cameras located throughout the city of Orlando, Lake Eola recently, Paramore. We're adding cameras to South Paramore and the Columbia Paramore area, I-Drive, Metro West, and of course our next phase will concentrate on a Cimarron Boulevard corridor. It's helped us solve everything from, we had a homicide last year where the IRIS camera saw the vehicle take off and the tail light happened to be broken out, and we were able to identify that vehicle and tie the whole case together based on IRIS. The next video you're going to see is a strong-arm robbery that happened downtown Orlando. The suspect was a career criminal. He had 9 arrests, 3 for robbery alone. And these are just our officers that are on restricted duty that have, hurt their elbows, knees, or whatever, and they're in the camera room watching this. They thought this vehicle was suspicious, so they kind of zoom in on the tag so we have that tag as evidence if the vehicle gets away. But they just thought their activity was a little out of the ordinary, and it was. They walk over and commit a robbery, steal a cell phone and a wallet from the victim, and you'll see it here in a minute. And they really punch and kick the victim as well. all caught on tape. You see him punching and kicking this victim there on the ground. Steal his wallet, steal his cell phone, and then get in the car and take off. He's laying there on the ground. And again, we initiated that. The officers saw that that vehicle just didn't look right, the way it pulled up, and they all got out. And you'll see a very quick response. This is real time, where the officers see the suspect vehicle leave. Of course, it was a robbery, so the officer waits for backup to do the felony stop. Okay, we're already on it. Right behind it, calling in the traffic stop now, within seconds. The victim was transported to the hospital for his injuries. Have all the suspects out, and 3 arrests were made, I believe. And lastly, in summary, I'm sure you've all been waiting for this. But anyways, goals for fiscal year 2011-2012, of course, to reduce violent crime, to recruit exceptional applicants, officer safety, and then customer service. And when you think about it, why do citizens call the police? Unfortunately, it's usually during a crisis, whether it's domestic violence or they're a victim of a burglary or they've been involved in a car crash. So I want to make sure we provide the best customer service to these folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, I'll close and go old school since we don't have the PowerPoint still up. Just go through the key dates of the rest of the budget process. Next time we'll be here is on July 25th, work session. The mayor will do his budget address. We'll also do another presentation on the expenditure side of the budget. And then on the City Council meeting on July 25th, you'll have the adoption of the proposed millage rate for fiscal year 2012. And then our next 2 dates that have been set are in September. On September 12th, we'll have a public hearing on the budget. Then September 19th, a public hearing as well as adopting the final millage rate and the budget for fiscal year 2012.
Thank you, Ray. Are there questions or comments of Ray or either of the chiefs? Commissioner Stewart?
Thank you, Mayor. Chief Miller, Chief Rooney, great job. Thank you for what you've done. I shared just this past week with Byron that we often don't realize how much we leverage financially outside of the general revenue, and so I appreciate you guys identifying that for us so that the citizens can see that it's not just the cash we bring here, but it's also the opportunity for us to leverage that in some other funding around from the state and from the federal government. So thank you very much. Ray, I've got a couple of quick questions on the so with a little bit of apology, let me kind of get to where we are. Save Our Homes, number 14. I was trying to understand that, and each year kind of runs together a little bit. The $3.1 billion represented in 2008 represents the amount of...
That's the amount of homestead value that has not been taxed because the Save Our Homes capped the 3% or the change in CPI. So that's value of homes that was not subject to ad valorem taxation.
Okay, and then it drops to $300 million.
Correct. And because what happens is that value accumulates year after year as property values grew. Our taxable values only grew by a maximum of 3% of the change in CPI, so there's all this excess value. Then as values dropped, all that value got eaten away as property values dropped. So if you had a $100,000 home that grew by 3% per year, for tax purposes it may have grown by 10% or 20%, and then as those values have dropped, all that Save Our Homes values came off the books.
This $300 million represents only that difference accumulated over the course of the city.
The $300 million represents what's off the books right now for
Okay.
taxation purposes related to homestead property.
Okay. On sales tax, do me a favor, I guess probably a little bit for me and a lot for those who are listening. Tell us how we get the calculation for the sales tax revenue for the...
There's two components. One is the projection of what the total sales tax revenue that's going to be generated statewide. It's not a local distribution, so you don't, just because it's paid in the city of Orlando for a purchase that was made in the city of Orlando, it doesn't come back. What happens is all of that is accumulated, and then the state has a formula for distributing that income back to the jurisdictions, primarily driven by population. So even though, you know, Orlando and the Orlando MSA is a large contributor of sales tax revenue because our high tourism business, we only get that back based on our population-based formula.
And then is there anything in a percentage of what we get in terms of sales tax on the local collection in Orange County? Or is that part of that same?
It's part of that calculation. There's a tax rate that's set for the state, and then that comes back to the city through the state sales tax formula.
When is this adjusted based upon the census? Is there an adjustment made, and is this the year that we make that adjustment?
It's based on a population estimate, so as part of the projection process, and then those numbers are really trued up based on the census data, really confirming what our population estimates are.
And that's going to occur. Is there going to be an adjustment to that? That's what I'm asking. Or do we?
No, it's not going to be. There's not going to be a census-based adjustment. There's a formula based on population that's used by population projections, as opposed to a true-up based on the census.
And there's also the last one I want to ask you about is municipal sharing revenue.
Yes.
Share a little bit about where that comes from.
Municipal revenue sharing is actually several revenue sources. There's a little bit of sales tax, there's a little fuel tax, and a couple other fees that go into a similar type of calculation. On the municipal revenue sharing, there's also a needs-based calculation that's part of that, and it's all a process that goes through the state, and then they come back and distribute it based on population, needs-based, and those types of factors.
Okay. All righty. If we get a chance in the next couple of weeks, swing by. I want to talk to you about some of those figures and get some other questions answered again. So, thank you for your work, and Rebecca, thank you for your leadership as well. You guys always do a great job identifying those things for us, and just being. This sounds terrible, but just being matter of fact about it. This is what the facts are. Let us make our decisions the best way possible, and I appreciate you guys doing that.
And just want to say that we're available to any of the commissioners for any kind of in-depth questions you want to ask or any information that you want to request of us. We remain available to you.
Commissioner Lynham, then Commissioner Khan.
Thank you. Just a couple of issues. I do have more questions, but I'll deal with them away from the dais. But I do want to ask Ray, what is the city's total reserve at this time, including the 25%? I mean,
25%, we're roughly at $100 million.
Okay, that includes the 25%?
Yes.
What aside from that? I mean, I know we had the $25 million in reserve for the TDT. You know, we were using that on the Dr. Phillips piece. Is that moving that aside then?
Moving that aside is about $80 million.
Okay, super. Okay. I wanted to just make a, thank you, Ray, and I'll talk more, ask Byron and to come in and talk with me. Just a couple of issues. Sometimes when you're talking to the dais, it's as if the commissioners are irrelevant. Now, we aren't even here. You say the mayor did this, the mayor did that. It's like, when did the commissioners fit into any of this? But I'd like to say a real special thanks to all of you, but I want to especially pull out the piece on the training and customer services that Chief Rooney has mentioned. I think the cameras are superb, the audiovisual aids in the cars, because cities and municipalities or villages or whatever you are were created to provide the services that we're talking about today, including air and utilities and all of those things. But without the citizens, you wouldn't be necessary. So customer service, to me, is really, really important. I know about neighbors from hell. I know about criminals because they all live in my backyard. So I appreciate your work. I appreciate the fire department and all the things you're doing. Based on what Chief Miller said, I'm of the opinion that 46 firefighters that we were looking at laying off, but were able to save because of the Saver grant, that's now no longer relevant, right? I mean, we were taking care of that through, I don't know where you went to.
He's right.
Oh, there's, we were able to, through new grants, eliminate any threat to, when those grants expire. So you had said over $9 million, we were able to get in new grants.
Yes.
So that's no longer a threat for the 2012.
That's correct. The grant ends next August. And so we're in discussions with our transport revenue as we do this evaluation that should offset any needs to worry about the 46 firefighters at that point.
Great, because I want them to know, too, that these are grants that are saving their positions, and sometimes people seem totally oblivious to that because they're so essential. And I'm very, very thankful for the work that you do and appreciate it. And I just have no complaints about it except trying to save those positions. But I did want to make sure you knew about our concern for you and for the Orlando Fire Department and the great public service. I know most of us see firefighters not only in the role in fighting fires, but in the supermarket. That's where I run into firefighters every day. I go to the market, and I just basically ask what they're having for dinner. So, and I always promise to come to dinner. I don't always show up. Well, I haven't showed up in years. But I do like the great customer service. And Chief Rooney, I appreciate the work you're moving forward on customer service and your new training and the camera of audio-visual aids. I think that is essential to make your customers, us, feel comfortable and want to do even more in making things right for our citizens. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And on the SAFER grant, that was a result of the fire administration and the fire union working together in partnership with our federal legislators. Senator Lemieux actually played a very critical role in helping us with that at the time. And it is a multi-year award, and I think, I'm right on this, Chief, that we had the second largest SAFER grant in the entire country, so testament of everybody working together on that. Commissioner Diamond and then Commissioner Ings.
Thank you. First of all, good job. I enjoyed that. I thought everybody did a nice job. Thank you. I have a PowerPoint for part of what we got today, which was part of the one from Rebecca and Ray. Can we get the PowerPoints from all the presenters and everything that was presented today?
Chiefs, yeah, we don't have it up here. We didn't have either the fire or the police presentation in hard copy.
Okay. Thank you. The next thing is I was really taken with the iris camera, Chief. I thought that was pretty impressive. And were the people talking on the camera, were those folks at OPD headquarters, or was that sound coming from the scene of the crime, of the incident?
Actually, what you heard was communications. They were communicating. The iris folks, the folks watching the cameras, were calling into communications. There was no video at the scene, or I'm sorry, audio at the scene.
Okay, just curious. It was very impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah. And just to touch on a couple of things. First of all, going back to the budget and the finances presentation, on the OUC side, as much as we all want to see the general fund do well, I think we all want to see OUC do well. And I'd like to know from the OUC standpoint, as far as the contributions that they make to the city to go into the general fund, what formula has been used in the past? I understand it was a subject of an agreement. The agreement's running out, and then going forward with the negotiations, where and what impact does that have on the OUC bond ratings? And what impact have we had, and where do we think that's going to go?
The traditional calculation is that there's really two pieces of this payment. The first is a quasi-franchise payment, which is a revenue-based payment, which is 6% of gross revenues, and that's passed through in a similar way that it would be passed through on Progress Energy or any of these other providers of electric services.
And if I could stop you, is that, did you say 6 or
6%?
6%?
Yes, 6%.
Okay. And is that everything on the OUC bill? Or is that just the electric, or is that the water also?
I believe that's total, yes, that's total revenue, so it would be for everything. And that essentially, traditionally has been a franchise tax that essentially allows for a utility to use right-of-way. And so that's that particular piece of it. The other piece has been a calculation of 60% of net revenues thereafter. And in earlier in this or in I guess around 2003 or 4, there was an adjustment made, and a greater level of assistance was provided from OUC for a couple of years, and then they came to us with a proposal for a 4-year agreement, which was not calculation-based. It was agreed upon. The last year of that 4-year period is this year, this fiscal year. We have been in conversations with OUC's finance office and the CFO over there, John Hearn, and John has indicated to us that an appropriate level for this next year's OUC payment, and that includes both the revenue-based payment as well as the net income-based payment, would be to make that level with 2011. So essentially, we're using the same number that we had agreed upon for 2011 for 2012. What that then does is begin to reduce the amount or the level, percentage, if you will, of the total revenues that are paid to the city for OUC, and that will address some of the comments that have been made by some of the rating agencies. At this particular point, there is not a necessity for that number to be reduced, but it does assist a great deal in that staying flat, and that's what we've done in this particular budget. And that was the request that came from OUC. That's what they requested for us to do and what they felt would be appropriate for this payment to be made.
And I know you said that the last 4 years have been a fixed number instead of percentage. How did it work out percentage-wise?
It is probably higher because the anticipated growth that OUC had in their model did not occur. As we know, we've not had the kind of growth that we would have expected 4 years ago in our community. And so as a result, that percentage crept up, and that's one of the reasons why they want to have it level so that we can manage that number, that percentage back down.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I want to ask about the red light cameras also, as far as what was expected versus what came in. Is that you, Ray?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do your estimates include the new cameras that will be going in the city?
As a matter of fact, no. We're not anticipating any additional cameras in our budget estimates for the fiscal year 2012. What happened in 2011, we budgeted based on what we thought the volume was going to be for the number of cameras. State legislation changed. The state is actually keeping a portion of those fees, and that's why we're not achieving our revenue estimate for 2011. For fiscal year 2012, we're going back to a much more probably a budget basis that's break even for the red light camera program and not banking on any additional revenue coming from red light cameras to support the rest of the city operations.
Okay. Would it be possible to get a summary of that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can do that.
Okay. And then, Ray, I know you, I know Commissioner Stewart asked about this as far as the Save Our Homes, and it really was quite a chart to see the big difference between what it was, say, 5 years ago and what it is now. Do you have something similar on commercial property?
I do. That one slide where it just showed what that difference is, I can give you a little bit more detail. Commercial property has only been in effect for the last 2 years. The 10% cap on non-homestead property has been in effect for 2 years. I think the slide right after the homestead showed what that graph was for those two particular fiscal years. And you can see it's actually a different trend. Obviously, the first year there's more property coming on because it was the first year. We saw an increase in that exemption for 2012, which is a good sign that property values on the commercial side are growing.
Okay. And it's a 10% cap, but there is going to be a referendum on decreasing that cap to 5%?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's a year away.
Okay.
I think it's a year, November of next year.
General election 2012.
Right.
Okay. All right. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Commissioner Ings and Commissioner Lyon.
Thank you, Mayor. Ray, Rebecca, thank you so very much for your presentation. And Rebecca, I just wanted you to comment a little bit about the clean audit. Is that an atypical situation, or what's been your history for clean audits?
We have always had a clean audit here.
Okay.
And we would not want it to be anything but that.
Okay.
Actually, the clean audit is tremendously more common than no management letter comments.
And which is great, and I just wanted to kind of highlight that, and especially as it relates with our public, so that they also realize that it's not just a one-time deal that's been happening with the city of Orlando, but this has been several years, so thank you very much. And Chief Miller, if you would please come forward, sir. I want to thank you for your presentation. And in regards to the Fire Explorer program, is that still in operation, and are you trying to enhance that even more?
It is. Even through the difficult financial times, we still have approximately 35 Explorers, and they're having an opportunity, obviously from the age of 14 to 21, to see what a career in public service is like, and try to help them in their guidance and keep them on the straight path, even if they don't choose the fire service as a career.
Okay. And you had a very good presentation, and I thank you so very much for that.
Yes, sir.
But, Chief.
Yes, sir.
You did not introduce your command staff.
I didn't. I didn't.
So would you please introduce your command staff?
I certainly will. I think you all have met most of them. Deputy Chief Earl Yeoman has been with the department for nearly 25 years. Deputy Chief Greg Hoggett has been 23 years. And, of course, Deputy Chief John McCormick, who's in charge of the Field Operations Bureau, is passing 26, coming on 27 years with the department.
All right. Thank you, Chief.
Chief Rooney always out there.
and Chief Rooney, if you would, please. I want to thank you, too, for your presentation as well. But, these in-car dash camera systems, they really work.
Yes,
and
they
they
do.
work towards the safety of the officers as well as the public and as well as evidentiary value, too. But are we looking at trying to do that within the patrol fleet as well to increase the in-car dash camera program? Now, this is something that Commissioner Lynham has spoke of ever since I've been on this council. And but, we just haven't really gotten any real feel for that.
Right. Like I stated, we just carved out 16 in-car videos, camera systems. We're in the process of purchasing those, and that's about $100,000. That includes the 2 servers. What we were looking at in a test phase were actually the body microphone and video cameras that are attached to the shoulder mic, but it's still new in testing, and we're not even close there. We had 7 or 8 of them out deployed throughout the city, but they're not showing what we need to show. If you have a short officer, they're showing the chest of somebody. If you have a taller officer, they're not even showing the face or the body of from the shoulder up. So they're still testing those. But
Okay.
that is the direction we'd like to go.
These 16 cameras that you're getting now, these are the ones for the DUI and aggressive driving?
Some of
program?
them, but no, now we're going to start going into the patrol fleet.
Okay.
We already have some in Drug Enforcement Division. We already have some in aggressive driving vehicles in the DUI enforcement team. But even after that, we'll start going into the patrol fleet.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Sure.
And thank you, Mayor. That's all I had.
Thank you, Commissioner. Back to Commissioner Lyon.
Could Chief stay up? I thought we would close with a little humor. And I had talked with the Chief before about those cameras, Commissioner. But on my morning walks, from time to time, I tend to run into a little trouble. I hope to stay safe, but one morning I had a response to a police officer in an SUV who helped me kind of track down that prostitute. Remember, I'm like telling him, go, 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 there she is, there she is. And he was, I think he was a lieutenant, because that's all Kevin could get out there. But the other morning, Chief, I had a little more activity. I hadn't had a chance to tell you about this one. 3 patrol cars responded. So I was telling the officer I felt real secure. I mean, sort of. But I didn't feel so secure I didn't call 911.
Right.
Twice. That's how we had those responses. So I told the officer, I've got my equipment, I've got my weapon, my little tiny mace. And he said, I carry a gun, and I'm still scared to go down here. So I was like, well, I'll be darned. I thought I was ready. I don't know his name. He had silver hair, but it looked young. He was like, well, I carry a gun. I told my neighbors, you all better be careful. That guy said he carries a gun, and he's still scared. So I just wanted to talk about public response and, of course, customer service.
Yes.
Gosh, I wish I knew that officer's name, but it was 3 different cars, and one was a sergeant, I know. And, you know, we're really attacking that issue over on Givens. Every time I go there, I mean, these people holler at me and try to attack me. Mm-hmm. So I really appreciate your help.
Absolutely.
But I have my little mace and my pepper spray, but I think the only person I'm going to be effective on using that is a dog. So I still need you guys with those weapons out there to help us move through and eliminate this situation working with code enforcement. But whoever that officer was, I have just got to compliment him on great response, all of them. I don't even remember. They were like little children to me. A couple of them are so young. I'm like, baby, you out here on the streets. You know, I need some real burly guys like Robinson. But no, where I live, I need a big stuff coming with a shotgun or something. I don't know. But thank you so very much, and I thought that was a little levity to share in closing out this workshop.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Chief, is the $900,000 pain money subject to forfeiture?
Yes. Oh, yes, it is.
So
yes,
who gets that?
It's divided up between the investigating agencies. MBI's got a governing board, Winter Park, Apopka, of course OPD, Orange County, and we have, because we loan them an attorney, we have a little bit more to a bigger reward. Let me just leave it at that. Yes.
That's great.
Sure.
Well, Commissioners, because of the actions and decisions that you guys have made collectively over the last few years, we are in a lot better position than most other local governments. I don't know if you guys are reading the state clips or not, but just about every other major city is talking about major layoffs and dipping into reserves and depleting reserves. So we have made some difficult decisions over the last couple of years, but it has really served us well and put us in a very stable financial position. So I thank you for your efforts over the last couple of years. And with that, we will conclude our workshop.